Welcome to today's show. My name is Will Huber. I'm going to be your host. Today we're going to be interviewing Minnesota Representative Larry Kraft from District 46A. I hope that you guys enjoy the show, and I'll catch you guys at the end. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me. And today I'm here with Representative Larry Kraft. We're just going to jump right into the questions. What would you say first inspired you to run for public office?
Yeah, my story is I actually spent 25 years in the private sector in the high-tech industry. Moved to Minnesota 22 years ago to run sales and marketing for a mid-sized company. And I have two kids that are now 18 and 20. But when they were quite a bit younger, I was getting increasingly concerned, really terrified about the future that they would have and the impact that climate change would have on it. Mm-hmm. So about 12 years ago, I made a career shift. I left the private sector and wanted to focus my time on trying to do something about climate change. I wound up running a nonprofit for about 5 years called iMatter that helped young people, high school and middle school students, take local action on climate change. And it would help them go before their city councils, school boards, and push them for resolutions or climate action plans. Well, we supported students all over the country, and one of our pilot campaigns was in my community of St. Louis Park, and the students just did an amazing job. They went before council, this was in March of 2016, and convinced council to do a climate action plan involving the young people in the process. And that led to St. Louis Park passing the most aggressive climate action plan in Minnesota in February of 2018. Wow. And at that point, about a year later, decided to merge the nonprofit in with another local nonprofit. And then I decided to run for city council to implement that plan. My platform was literally, we're going to implement the climate action plan that these students initiated. I want more young people involvement in government, and I want to use this to strengthen the diversity of the community. And I won and served on city council for 3 years until this position opened up, and I then ran for this position also as a climate candidate.
Mm-hmm. So really focused on climate change as being your main sort of driving factor there.
Yeah, climate change is why, trying to do something about it is why I'm in politics. Now I get involved in many other things, but we have to make progress on it. Climate change is a systemic issue and requires systemic solutions, and government is a key player in driving those kind of systemic changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So you said that you started in the city council as a city council member at St. Louis Park. And how would you say that experience shaped how you lead and your public service now in the House of Representatives from a greater position?
Well, it was a great training ground to learn about issues, about being able to put together a coalition to get at the city level its ordinances passed.
Yeah.
I mean, the city council was 7 people, so I just tell people that are considering running, you have to be able to count to 4.
Yep.
Now in the Minnesota House, I have to be able to count to 68, so I had to count a little bit higher to pass something. But and the issues are different, but the process is similar of figuring out, all right, what is it? I think it's really important to realize as a elected official, you can be very reactive because there's always things coming at you of legislation to read or review, or at the city council level ordinances or issues. So you can be reactive, but if there's something you want to achieve, you have to think about what it is that I want to achieve and how will I do that? And then you get to create, in this case of city council, an ordinance, here a bill, legislation. So it was really the understanding that you have to be proactive and really think about what you want to do.
Yeah. And speaking of sort of that legislative work and what you've been doing, what would you say is the most rewarding part of serving in the Minnesota House so far? Maybe any sort of big achievement that you've accomplished? Or
the highest level, it's being able to make change and see that happen and have an impact. And that's very rewarding, and be able to do that on the issues that I care about and the issues my constituents care about, and support them. I would say probably the biggest legislative achievement is a bill that I got done in 2023, and it was, and it's not one that rolls off the tongue. It's about the climate impact of expanding highways. But it's probably the most impactful thing that I've done, because what the bill, now law, says is that if you're going to be expanding a highway, and very often the reasons people expand, or the Department of Transportation will expand highways, to address some kind of congestion issue.
Yeah.
The thing is, what we've learned is that it doesn't work, actually. When you expand a highway, maybe you reduce congestion for a period of time, but within a few years, you have as much, if not more, congestion, and you just have more people on the road, more pollution. And to address transportation emissions, which is the #1 source of greenhouse gas emissions, we have to electrify things, but we also have to make it so people can live their lives and drive a little bit less. So what this law says is, look, if you're going to be expanding a highway and it's going to cause people to drive more, more vehicle miles traveled, more greenhouse gas emissions, you actually have to offset it with other approaches. Maybe that's with investments in transit, bicycle pedestrian infrastructure, car sharing, even land use, where you put things so that people can drive a little bit less. And why this is important is that MnDOT, Minnesota Department of Transportation, has a goal to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 20% reduce vehicle miles traveled 20% per person by 2050. Now, this is one of their key tools to be able to do that, which will help reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But by the way, it also reduces air pollution, fewer deaths on the road, all kinds of other benefits to it too. So that is kind of first in the nation legislation. So I've been speaking about it to legislators in other states as well that are trying to do some of the similar things that we've done.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting concept to sort of balance out. You add this, add something else to sort of counteract it and fight against it at the same time. So on the flip side, what's sort of the biggest challenge or surprise that you've faced since you took office?
Well, I'd say that those are two different things. I mean, the biggest surprise to me was that how much power you actually have as a legislator. The ability to pass new laws is really significant.
Yeah.
And really can make change. So that was, I mean, I expected that, but I didn't really, that's pretty cool. One of the biggest challenges, I would say, was early on, this job in Minnesota. I mean, we're technically part-time, and so our sessions run for 5 months 1 year, 4 months the next year. And I remember my first few weeks on the job in 2023. Session started, and you go from 0 miles an hour to like 110 overnight, and it was so much was happening. Requires so many hours, and you're trying to create bills, and constituents are coming to you, and lobbyists are coming to you. It's this whirlwind, and it takes a while to figure out how to actually keep up. And the other big challenge is in city council, we would get a packet on Thursday night from staff. You get to research it over the weekend and be ready for the Monday night meeting and be prepared.
Yeah.
And always be prepared. At the state legislature, you cannot be prepared. There's too much. You have to rely on other people on your team to focus on different areas.
Yeah.
So that was a big challenge, especially I like to be prepared, a bit of a control freak. So to be able to realize, you can't do that. And the other kind of crazy thing about this job is when you hit the end of session, you're going at this high speed, this high rate with all these people you're spending every waking hour with, and all of a sudden it just stops.
Yeah.
And you're done.
Yeah. Would you say that even though it's considered a part-time job, it could be also considered a full-time job?
Yeah. I think it should be, and I'll tell you why. I treat it as I'm at a point in my career where I can treat it as a full-time job, so I don't have another job outside. But many of my colleagues are not as lucky and privileged as I am to be able to do that. But the pay rate is as if it's a part-time job, which means that it limits the types of people that can do the job, because you either be able to have another job for 6 months out of the year, or be able to not need a full-time job compensation. So it limits the type of people, and it puts a lot of stress on people that are in a different stage of their career than I am. So I think, and I will tell you, even not in session, like I spend full-time amount of hours on preparing legislation, talking to constituents, addressing issues, learning. So I mean, it really probably should be.
It's a full-time job. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then sort of shifting to your values and priorities, how do you balance representing your district with working on issues like climate change, and then balancing representing the rest of Minnesota as a state legislator and no longer just a city council member?
Well, a few things. One is that I'm very clear when I was running for office what my values were, what my focus was, and my community is, I think I'm in line with them. I think I understand. And I do a lot of door knocking.
Yeah.
So I think I've got a pretty good understanding of my community's values and the things that they care about. And I try to represent those. The other thing is, folks come to me with problems. And sometimes there are things we can resolve, but sometimes there are opportunities for legislation. And I've done a number of pieces of legislation that come from constituents saying, hey, I've got this issue. Kind of a fun one was in 23, this fellow by the name of Jim Nicholson came to me and said, look, I have a boat that I store in a lake up north, and I wrap it in plastic in the winter to protect it, boat wrap.
Yeah.
And I used to be able to recycle it, and the recycling stopped. Can we fix that? And so I did a bill on extended producer responsibility for boat wrap plastic. And what the bill says is that means that if you produce this stuff in Minnesota, that you have to fund the collection and recycling of it.
Yeah.
And it's also a first in the nation bill to do extended producer responsibility for boat wrap plastic. But that's now the law here.
Yeah.
And that comes from constituents. So I think it's a constant mix, and not all of my constituents voted for me, and so, but I represent all of them, and so it's my responsibility to listen. We may disagree on some things, but to listen and try to help and understand and incorporate that into the work that I do.
Absolutely. And then, sort of for some advice and reflections, if there was a young person that came up to you tomorrow and said that they wanted to serve in a public office, what would you tell them? What advice would you give them? And what would you tell them to sort of look out for?
I would say fantastic. Love that. And, a good place to get started is in your local government, is in your city government. For example, in St. Louis Park, one of the things I was most proud of on council was I had an ordinance in place that had seats reserved for 2 young people, 2 high school students on each of our citizen commissions. Mm-hmm. So look there. It's a great way to, if there's a commission or work groups, you can either try to join it or just go. Like council meetings and all these things, they're open to the public.
Yeah.
I served on a commission for a year before I joined city council, before I ran for city council. But even before that, I attended a work group's meetings on some sustainability stuff. So look at what's going on in your community. Look at what's going on in your school. If there are things that you think should change, go talk to your school board. One of the things the students did in St. Louis Park was they went to the school board, and the school board adopted a resolution kind of mirroring what the city had done.
Yeah.
So those are great ways to get started. The other thing is, if you're in Minnesota, if you're a high school junior, there's a PAGE program where you can come spend a week on the floor with us and assist the legislators, handing out materials and things like that. That's a great thing to do. If you're in college, there's an internship program. So I have an intern every session that works with me and helps me on stuff. So look for opportunities like that. But local government is a great way to get started. And often, like when I first ran for city council, I was 53, yes. And one of my dear friends who started in city council, running for city office at the same time, we started our political careers at the same time, was Nadia Muhammad, and she was 23, and she won, and she's now the mayor of St. Louis Park, and she's 29.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. You can really develop quickly there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sort of our final, last closing reflection question. When people look back on your career specifically, what do you hope that they'll say you stood for?
Well, I hope they'll say that I listened
Mhm.
and represented my community, and that I was able to make meaningful progress in Minnesota on climate change that contributed to addressing this issue, which I think will impact all of us. It will impact you in your future. And so I hope that I'm part of folks in many places around the world that are making a difference to make the future better.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
You're
That's some
welcome.
really
Thank you
good
so much.
answers.
Yeah,
And thank you for coming on the show today.
my pleasure.
Thank you for taking your time to watch the show today. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. If you have any representatives that you'd like us to interview in the future, feel free to leave their names in the comments below. Or if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, also feel free to leave those below. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next interview.